And welcome back, everyone. I am Solid Blue Sister, and this is episode number 14 of I Am My Own Story. And today we have Michael Key, who is going to talk to us about living with Tourette's syndrome. So, Michael, thank you for agreeing to do this. Thank you for giving me your time because I appreciate you
No,
saying
thank
yes
you.
to doing this. So, first of all, I want to ask you so everyone knows what is Tourette's?
So Tourette's is a neurological disorder. It's not a mental disorder. Like I think some people might get it confused, but it's a neurological disorder, and from my understanding, is like a type of misfiring in your neurons that causes some of these tics. And so I want to say to be diagnosed with Tourette's, because a lot of people have tics. They may have one thing. You have to have two motor tics, which is like a physical twitch, um, and one vocal tic. Now, those, like with me and with others, those aren't always the same thing. As far as like, you know, some of the tics I had when 10 years ago are different than what they are now. But it is kind of consistent as far as what I think qualifies you and how they diagnose you. Um, I was diagnosed, gosh, maybe when I was in first grade or second grade, I think it was. So it's been quite a while. But yeah, it's just uncontrollable tics that, movements and noises that, again, you can't control. And sometimes, for the most part, you may not even realize you're doing it, as far as the smaller ones. But there are other times when you do know you're doing it, and it's pretty annoying. But
Can I interrupt for a moment? So, you were
yeah.
diagnosed when you were in first grade. Was it because your mom and dad saw you continually doing something, or like you didn't do when you were a baby, or
So Tourette's is a what's the word I'm thinking of? It's a they think it's hereditary. And I think that's where evidence is leading them to believe, is that it's hereditary. My parents always kind of thought, I had a head injury when I was younger, when I was playing around the house, I guess, and slammed my head against one of the dressers, and they said probably close to knock myself out. This is probably when I was around, I don't know, maybe right after I started walking. Um, but as far as they know, it's hereditary. Now, as far as I remember, I've always had these tics, and I remember my parents saying stuff about it, and kind of not understanding what was going on. Well, I want to say it was second grade, because I went to a private school when I was in pre-K kindergarten. First grade, I went to a public school, and then I went back to that same private school for second, third, and fourth. And I remember in second grade, one of my friends and one of our family friends who was a doctor said his son had it pretty bad, actually. And I think he ultimately kind of brought awareness to my parents to maybe go and get me checked
tested?
out. And I had a doctor that, I mean, my pediatrician, all my family went to, is a very good doctor, and he's kind of the one that said, yeah, this is what's going on. Um, and so that's why I kind of go back to the second grade time, because I remember that kid. I'm not gonna say his name or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
and I remember his dad, who was a doctor, um, and I do remember his dad coming to school and talking about what Tourette's was because of his son. Kind of letting the class know what was going on. No one ever said anything to him. We all kind of just saw that he did something, but at that age, no one ever cares or
Right.
says anything. And but I remember kind of just that time of events going on, and
Well, if if the if they're saying that it's a genetic,
mhm.
then do you have an uncle or aunt or great great grandfather or
Not that not that my parents ever really noticed. Again, so with Tourette's, a lot of times you end up growing out of it. It's really predominant in those prepubescent years, I think is the right
mm-hmm.
word. And a lot of people tend to kind of it'll ease or grow out of it from what I've read after they become an adult. With me, that wasn't the case. I think they're a little bit better most of the time now. They still can be bad again. It flares up. It kind of comes and goes, and some days are worse, and sometimes it don't even happen. At least not that much. It's always happening, but um, so it's hard to tell because anyone in my family that may have had it may have you know just it may have gone unnoticed. It may have been that they kind of grew out of it as they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different things, and you understand it hasn't been that long. I think it goes back to the late 1800s when Tourette's actually became something that was diagnosable, and it really kind of it hasn't been that long that it's been studied a whole lot. So it's kind of hard to say.
So, is there medication that you take for it, or you just deal with it, or
So
are there any exercises, or?
yeah, great question. There is medication. There's nothing that cures it. Now
Mm-hmm.
they are currently in the process of developing a couple different things that seems like it really relieves it. Uh, so this kind of goes into the story, and I can tell you. So some of the medications I've taken now. I also with Tourette's, you usually find that an ADHD diagnosis with it. Now people think, oh, ADHD, that's just something that parents cover up and stuff like that. And for the most part, I actually think that I'm one of these people. I think that it's far overdiagnosed, and I think that it's kind of a ploy to get parents out of the responsibility of dealing with the behavior of some of their children. 100%. I think that we're definitely over medicated as a society. But what they do tend to find is if you have ADHD, it doesn't mean you have Tourette's. But if you have Tourette's, most of the time you're going to have ADHD. They also find that around 25 or just over 25% of people with Tourette's are on a spectrum as well. Now, I've never had any kind of testing with that. My wife always kind of
Wait, when you
gives
say
me a hard time.
spectrum, when you say
Autism.
spectrum, autism, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I actually just found that out last year when I was doing reading on this because I try to keep up with the reading and
Mm-hmm.
learning about it and stuff like that. And I actually had just found that out, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And I was like, wow, that's who would have thought about that. But as far as medication, I've taken a whole different range. Now, the thing I was on the longest was actually an antibiotic, amoxicillin. And don't ask me why. I think it was something to do with inflammation, because inflammation in your brain is what seems to make the ticks worse or relieve them. And so fish oils like omega-3s work very well because omega-3s help take inflammation away. Uh, Amoxicillin was something I was on for a while. Then Abilify was another thing. I wasn't very good at taking that because that was around the time I was like kind of later in my high school years, going into college where I had more responsibility. And Abilify really made me tired. Abilify, I believe, is an anti-anxiety drug or something close to that. And I don't have anxiety whatsoever. I don't have any depression. I don't have nothing like that. And so it just wasn't a good fit. Then they gave me I think guanfacine is a blood pressure medication. Again, I could be wrong, but I know it's something kind of related to that. Doesn't work. But I remember my junior year had been, I redshirted, so it really been I was a 5-year football player in college, so my junior year really was like my 4th year in. I remember that spring going into our spring workouts, my ticks were pretty bad. I was having a hard time kind of focusing in school, and I talked to the team doctor, and he put me on this stuff called haloperidol. Now, haloperidol is a medication that they use really to treat Tourette's. And I was on it for about a month, and we went into kind of that prime time of our workouts, and I was overheating. I felt like crap. It was terrible. This medication was the worst medication I've ever taken in my life.
Wow.
And well, that, and then I remember the first medication they put me on for like ADHD was stuff called Concerta. And then I was on that for about 2 weeks. And Concerta is it's like a Adderall kind of thing, or like a
Mm-hmm.
Ritalin, but it works a little different. And I remember going from being highly energetic to happy, and all this, to walking around school, and I couldn't make a decision. I was thinking about this was after school, and I was helping coach the high school football team. This after I was done playing in high school, and I would like walk out of the practice field, and as I'm walking there, I'm like, I don't feel like going. And then I'd start walking back to the car because I was gonna go home, and then I'd be like, I don't want to go home, and then I think I'm gonna go to practice. And I remember one day, I was literally so indecisive walking back and forth down the hallway towards the field or to my car, and then I stopped and I was like, you know what? I'm never taking this shit again. It was weird the way I reacted to it, and it really made you more depressed is like what it was. Like, you didn't have any motive to do anything, you didn't have any desire. Like, it was the craziest stuff. And so I got off of that. The haloperidol in college was bad, and so once I stopped taking that haloperidol in college, I went to the doctor and I was like, don't even worry about it. We're not going to take nothing. And what I started doing is focusing on diet, because I've done some reading
Mm-hmm.
that there are dietary stuff you can do. Again, if it's based on inflammation in my brain, then why not stick to a diet that helps reduce that?
Mm-hmm.
What I found is that is actually the best thing for it. I know that when I stick to a very, very good diet, which I do tend to get off of sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
or a lot of times, you go on, you go off it, which is fine. Um, that there's a significant difference in how bad my tics are. The biggest thing I found is blueberries, because blueberries have a lot of antioxidants. But I find that blueberries, at least for me, if I'm eating them regularly, I hardly have any issue with my tics at all. So, this is nothing that's FDA approved, or nothing that's I don't know how much that's been studied. I just know it works for me, and I know that the way our medicine system works, you're never going to really see any other treatment outside of some kind of medication or surgery that's going to
Right.
be,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about herbal stuff, whatever, because you know it seems like more people are going away from taking what the doctor gave you, taking stuff that ends in oxide and whatever, and they're going, and your diet does matter, and you eat a lot of crap. This will happen. You
hmm
do this, it gets better. So
exactly.
so I'm going to ask this. You can
Yeah, go
answer
ahead.
if you know whatever. Can you share a one of the worst times that you've had, in terms of if anyone was like making fun of you, whatever,
Oh, absolutely.
like one of the
Uh,
worst times, and if it, and my follow up question is going to be, do you still see that person or interact with that person?
Oh, I have a great story. I actually told this story. I think you remember when I did the episode on my YouTube channel about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a couple stories. Elementary school, when I was at Seacrest, we were never wealthy growing up at all, but I had the luxury that we were able to go to the private school, and no one ever said nothing there, right? Even when I was in 5th grade, because I went back to a public school, um, I don't remember having much of a problem there. When I went to middle school, though, as kids start growing up, I was very small, um, didn't mature, like some of the other kids were, and I
Small
had
as in thin or small as in short?
both.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
tiny, yeah. And so you get picked on for that, but also my ticks, and I got picked on a lot, got in a lot of fights, a lot of fights. Um, that was kind of like a bad time, just because, and that's where I think I developed this problem, when it was a time where my family still was kind of getting used to, like not fully understanding what was happening. My little brothers would say things, because, they didn't understand, like, and then you had to deal with the kids at school. And so I became pretty self conscious about it when people would say things. And throughout that time, I mean, if someone said anything, we were fighting. It didn't matter what it was. It was very touchy with me. And then when I was a sophomore in high school, I was playing baseball, and this kid, again, I won't name names, who I didn't have a lot of respect for at that time because he always whined. He was kind of one of those wealthier kids, he had everything. He was very spoiled. Thought things should be handed to him as far as baseball was concerned. And him and I got into it because he was complaining about something. We were going into the last tournament of the year. By the way, our baseball team won state that year, but we were going into like the last tournament of the regular season for us, and we're at practice, and he was complaining about something about, I don't know, but it's something along the lines of playing. And I was kind of upset with him because I felt like, dude, you're starting on our team, and you're complaining about, I think it was like having to play a game the next day. And I'm like, who complains about something like that? And when I brought it up to him, he goes, "Oh, shut up, you Tourette's motherfucker," like that. And so we get into it, and fight gets broken up. Now that's a practice. Fast forward to the next day, we are playing in the championship for this tournament, and during the game, he got benched. And when he got benched, if I said, again, I don't remember what he said, but he said something about his play time, and I think it was along the lines of not wanting to play. And I wasn't playing at this point, by the way. I didn't play in that game, and I was pissed I wasn't playing the game. So I think what had happened is he had said something about he didn't want to play anymore in that game, and I was mad that, I wish I was playing. And in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm freaking, we're gonna go at it after this game. Like, it's over with. I couldn't put, and I was still mad about the Tourette's comment is really what it was. And so the Tourette's comment, I was still fired up. And then when he kind of went on to that, I made this decision. I'm like, you know what, we're going at it after this game. So we go on, we win that championship game. And, it's, the coach calls all the players together, and the parents all come behind the players in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the coach gets done talking, we stand up and we start walking towards our parents. And I started beating this kid so bad. He had no idea that this was coming. I mean, he had no chance, no nothing. I started beating him so bad in front of everybody. I remember the coach tackling me off of him to break the fight up. Everyone's like, what the hell is going on? My dad grabs me and rushes me out of that area. And this had happened at another local high school, by the way. This is a school event. In front of his own parents, in front of my parents, in front of everyone. When we leave, well, I get kicked off of the baseball team, obviously. They go on and win a state championship, so I wasn't much of a player in there anyway, but they didn't need me. And I remember our high school football coach, because we both played football, and we were at workouts, and this was the next day, and it was Coach Kramer, who was our high school coach, great coach. And I remember he actually talked to our athletic director and the principal to keep me from getting suspended, because, again, this was a high school event.
Function,
yeah. So I didn't get any suspension, thank God. But I remember him calling both of us up, me and this kid, in front of everyone, before we start working out. And he looks at me and he looks at him. And he looks at me, he goes, "Michael, is he your bitch now?" In front of everybody. And I just smiled and yeah, whatever. It's just making a joke and making light of things. Since that point, though, when I felt the repercussions of getting kicked off the baseball team, and saw how that actually can impact you with worrying about what people are saying, something just flipped in my head where I didn't care anymore. I think people got the point after that, about how I felt with it, and no one really ever said anything again, at least no one that I cared who had an opinion.
Did you guys ever talk, like, later on? Or?
Oh yeah, we became pretty good friends. I mean, literally the next year, it took us about a year, but he ended up quitting football and going and
Mm-hmm.
playing baseball. So he wasn't around me at football, and we never really had classes together.
Mm-hmm.
Never really hung out for like the next year, I'd say. Um, I went on my way, played football, and then I went into track instead of playing baseball. I went and ran track, which is, to me, was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I love track and field. It did wonders for me, and so it really worked out for the better. And then by senior year, we had class together, and we ended up becoming very good friends and hanging out and joke about it.
So, when you said that your younger siblings,
Mm.
um, you know, they didn't really know how to react, whatever. When you did that, did your family, did they kind of like get it, like this is what he's been going through and he's been struggling and
They knew about it, because again, this wasn't the first time I'd been in a fight for something like this.
I mean, but to just attack someone and unprovoked.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
it was provoked. Well, in my mind, it was justified provoked. Yeah.
it's not like he did something right then and there, like he shoved you or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, it was like the next day. So,
Yeah. It was, you know, I think they understood why. I never got in trouble for it at all
hmm
from anyone. The only repercussion I faced was being dismissed from the baseball team, which I had already had other issues going on with my baseball coach at the time because of my playing time. Um, and because there was issues with my baseball coach and my dad from when he was younger, like there was kind of some history there. Like, so there was already things kind of leading up to that, as far as getting kicked off the baseball team is concerned, but not the fight itself. Um, but I was one of those people, I didn't need, in that circumstance, my parents to discipline me over something like that. I think once that happened, they were well aware of what, there was no need for it because I kind of caught on. As far as my how they thought, like, oh, this has been affecting him and stuff, they already knew that. They knew I was bothered by people saying things, because when they would talk to me about it, hey, relax when my ticks were bad or whatever, hey, and they would ask me questions about it and stuff like that. So they had already had this kind of growing, um, understanding of what I was dealing with.
hmm
Never fully understanding it, but as far as my brothers, I'm the oldest, so they were younger. So that, when they said something, it was just kind of like whatever.
hmm
But my parents, they by this time had already known what was going on. Again, this isn't something that I think a lot of it is blown out of proportion for most people with Tourette's, as far as because you always see the bad cases. You always see the um, most severe, like the girl on TikTok that's real famous. You see the cussing and those
hmm
kids, 60 minutes and all
hmm
that. That's like a very small percentage of the people who have tics like that. The vocal, like word tics. Most vocal tics are like noises, grunts, sniffs,
hmm
like
hmm
uh, certain things like that. And go ahead.
So now I was just going to say, so do you have a concern that when you have children that it will be a genetic that's passed down, or you think that it's going to
Oh,
skip a generation?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as far as the hereditary part. That's just what I've read, and that's what they're assuming it is. Um, as far as my kids, when we do have kids, that's absolutely a concern. And thankfully for them, they'll have someone who has experienced and will know how to, or at least somewhat how to help. Right? There's only so much you can do, but my only hope is that it's not worse than what mine are, and hopefully they're fine.
Well, do you think that society, that like your teachers, your pastor, your reverend, your neighbors, whatever, do you think that society as a whole needs to learn more about it so that they can understand it, that it's just not this weird kid in school who's making these noises or doing or has these tics or whatever? Do you think there needs to be more of an awareness?
I think that there's already a lot of awareness around it. I think now there's also some false perceptions around it, and I can tell you another funny story. In high school, uh, about that, but I think that from what I'm kind of running into nowadays, you have people that say something, especially when I'm doing my YouTube videos and things like that, and people make comments and um, they may not know, but once you actually say that you have it, people kind of know, like, oh, okay. So I think there is a lot of awareness that's been raised, especially recently regarding Tourette's. I'm not one of those people that ever thinks, anyone should cater to me in any way or
Mm-hmm.
anyone in any way. Kind of my beliefs on that. And the best form of awareness is just research and development on maybe how to relieve it and to relieve it, or if you could ever cure it, I don't know, but how to do so in a way that is kind of ethical and healthy. But society is going to do what society does, right? Uh, I think that awareness will continue to be raised. I think that, um, you know, there's other things that are far worse. Now, some people have it so bad, and you feel so bad for them because they're the ones that really can't ever fit into society because it literally consumes their life. Their tics are so bad that they can't even drive a car. They can't function properly. How can you ever first of all, I think society, if you have any common sense, you would know that someone like that has an issue, right? Like, they're not just doing that. Um, and then how can you expect, it's you can't raise awareness more than, someone actually being around it and and physically seeing what someone's going through. It's kind of a tough question. I don't think that um, I don't know. I think that we've already done a pretty good job. I think they'll continue to do a good job. I'm sure we'll go into some of my thoughts on some of these celebrities that have had it recently come out with it. Um,
So
it's
when you're having when you have your ticks, I mean, is it just something that you're just used to? You don't even know that you have it, or
yeah, a
I'm
lot of
not. I mean,
times.
sorry that you're doing it. That's what I meant. That you're doing it, or sometimes you know you're doing it, or is it just like you just get up in the morning and you go to bed at night and yeah you did it, but you weren't even aware that you were doing it.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the main ones I have that are just there every day, right? Like, I don't know I'm necessarily doing it because I'm just so used to it, or it just happens, There are some days though that it's worse. Now, what I usually find is it'll go a while being hardly anything. I always have like small minor movements or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't notice it until I watch my videos and I'm editing. That's the only time I'll notice it. It's always kind of there, but then there's gonna be weeks where it's bad and it's annoying and it's like can't sleep. It's and I notice that it comes in kind of waves that like for a few weeks at a time or a month at a time or and like I like to run a lot. Like I notice that it affects my running and my breathing when I'm running because it's bad. Um, Tends to be around stress.
That, that's
Uh,
that's that's interesting because it would seem like that it would go away when you're exercising.
no, so uh, it doesn't necessarily go away when you're exercising because I think it's more based on stress. So when you're exercising, what I notice is that it actually will get worse as far as some of the breathing ones I've had, like uh, towards the end of the runs when I'm tired is when it starts. I start noticing it. Now I don't know if that's just me being more aware because I'm tired, or if it's because the stress you're putting your body through.
Got
Now
it.
there are certain things exercise like when I played football in the middle of a play when I was because your body's so focused for a short period of time, you don't do it like in the middle of because I played receiver in college, right? I wasn't like I was having ticks while I was catching a football. But you did notice it when I was on the sideline or in between plays and stuff. So it's not that it fully goes away. It's that those short periods of time when you're focusing, you don't have it. Like if you're doing sprints or you're doing, bench press or something like that, that's where it seems to go down. But then when you have those long kind of like a long jog for several minutes, if you're riding a bike or some kind of exercise like that, that's no break there. That's when you it still persists and it still has an effect. And you know it, and so I think it's stress related. It's definitely sleep related. If I'm not getting a lot of sleep, eventually it comes around and starts getting worse. So when you're tired, your body's kind of worn down. And I also have noticed that my ticks seem to flare up really bad just before I get sick. I
Hmm.
noticed before I got COVID, it did it. Before I get colds, it seems to do it. Yeah. I don't know if it's your body again going into a stress situation where your blood cells are starting trying to fight off this illness that's coming on. And so it's like maybe like a pre-indicator. Again, I think it's stress related. Um, I'd have to do more reading on that, but I've noticed personally that that's when it seems to get worse.
Okay. Can I make my COVID comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've never had COVID because I still wear a mask. But anyway,
Yeah, well,
I had to throw that in there. You know how I am with that. So,
hey, my wife's never had COVID and she's never worn a mask.
okay, but you're also in a country where they had a lot of big lockdown
They
on
didn't.
it. But
No, they didn't have the only in part of the in one of the states. They didn't have it here.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So, the other thing that I want to ask, now you said that some people grow out of it as they get older. Do you think, or you have an idea why you have not grown out of it? Or, I mean, do you think that you'll have it when you're 70, 80, that you'll still have it? Or,
Yeah, at this point, I think I'm gonna have it the rest of my life. I don't think. I think. Look, I don't know what the chances are. That's just from what I've read. That people say, uh, you know, you tend to grow out of it after puberty or as you become an adult. I don't know what the statistics are on that though. I think that if that's true, if I still have it, well, I'm long past puberty. And I think that the way it kind of is right now, it's never going to go away. I don't expect it to go away. Um, if it did, great, but chances are it was not. Thankfully, it's nothing that's um, bad on your health, at least for me, right? It doesn't decrease your life expectancy or anything
mm-hmm.
like that. Obviously, if you have some of these people where the ticks are extremely, extremely bad, that can be a health issue because of other things. Um, but yeah, I think it's permanent. I think I'm in it for the long haul at this point.
Okay.
Um, we'll see though.
So this may seem like a odd thing to ask, but do you see any pros to having it in terms of, are you more empathetic towards people? Are you more aware of what other people are going through? You know,
Yeah, there's definitely that awareness. I mean, um, one of the pros is just I think that the best thing it's done for me is it has literally taught me to not worry about other people's opinions of me. And I think that uh, from high school, and it could have been, me having Tourette's, it could have been just a maturity issue. But since went to college, it's funny because when I went to college, my teammates and stuff like that, people will always make the comment like when they see you like, "What are you doing?" But then you tell them, and they're like, "Oh," and then they don't say anything again. Um, and I think that it has helped me though, just completely have no disregard for people's opinion of me. I think that that's one of the greatest things we can have is some kind of carelessness towards other people's opinion where you can acknowledge it, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to bother you.
right,
And so
right.
that's a big pro to it. As far as anything else, I'm a highly energetic person for the most part. I don't know if that is related to the tics or the Tourette's or whatever, but um, there's always pros. I think that it's made me just a stronger person in having to overcome certain things. Again, this isn't some kind of empathy story, right? Because
Hmm.
my version of this, like my situation when it comes to Tourette's, is very, very, very minor. I think compared to a lot of people where they're way worse off than me. Um, you know, mine can get really bad, and I know that people stare a lot of times, or they look over like, "What the hell is wrong with this person? Who cares?" But other people are far worse off than I am when it comes to this, and so it does make me more empathetic or understanding of what other people go through as far as not just Tourette's but other issues health wise, because you can be empathetic for people who are unhealthy and disabled as long as it's not self-caused, right? Like as long as it's not like I may not have as much empathy for someone who's dealing with lung cancer who voluntarily smoked for 40 years, 10 packs a day, right? Whereas I have more empathy for someone who was born with a condition or a condition comes on that they can't control.
Right.
Like that's where the big thing is. And so, it does shape, your personality though, for sure.
Do you see it as a disability?
No, absolutely not for me. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, I'm not disabled. For some people, yes. Again, there's that girl on TikTok that is big. I don't know what her name is, but she has millions of followers. Some people say hers aren't real. I think they are. For her, they are. And this is actually a conversation I do want to get into, though, in a second with you, because I think it's important as far as awareness with this. But I don't think she can even drive a car. And then when there's videos of her helping her mom cook and making a mess, like because of the ticks, and so it does affect people very, very badly. And I think that in some circumstances it can be a disability. But again, I think the bottom half of the people that have it, or most of the people that have it, it's not disabling at all, right? People go on and be very successful. Tim Howard, who was the goalie of the U.S. soccer team, the greatest goalie the U.S. soccer team's ever had, like that's saying much, but it was was a big time goalie overseas for a while. He has it. There's who's this singer? It's a woman. She's a newer, younger one. I can't remember her name. She's got it. And then there's a newer singer. It's a guy. He's pretty famous worldwide now, and he has it now. He was just diagnosed with it, and he decided to cancel his tours.
And that was Louis Capaldi.
Yeah, he sings a song that's pretty well known. I don't listen to his music, but I do know one of his songs. And I saw that when I was over here, and I remember telling my wife that was bullshit of him, because he took it. This goes back to, now look, this is coming from someone who has it and deals with this. Okay, so I'm not looking from the outside in.
But but hold on. But before you say that, though, Mike, can't you? I mean, people deal with stuff differently.
They deal with stuff, but I can tell you this: if he just got diagnosed, he's in his 20s. Okay.
Yeah.
If he just got diagnosed and he was already dealing with this prior, it doesn't just come on. Okay. It's something that may have gone onto the radar, which means it probably wasn't severe enough. Okay. Where, and apparently at one of his concerts, he was having issues with his tics, and I do understand that, and I get it, right? And I can understand where, again, the stress mode and the adrenaline of going on and performing in front of a lot of people and having these tics where it's, and he's struggling performing, right? But this wasn't his first concert. This wasn't his first time doing it. Now they do flare up. Hold on. And this was something that he was diagnosed with just recently, but he had already been dealing with this in the past. Okay. Again, it doesn't just come on at age 20 something. And he didn't stop performing because of the Tourette's. He stopped performing because of the diagnosis of Tourette's, and he needed to take time. He took it as, oh my God, this is life-changing that I was diagnosed with it, okay? And all of a sudden, it was just the confirmation aspect of having it, not the fact that he actually had it, that made him go into a mental health crisis. I'm sorry, but that was wrong. That's him.
But that's what I was going to ask you, because, let me ask this, because psychologically, I'm
Mhm.
playing with both sides here. Let's say, for the last year or so, you've been losing weight. You just don't feel well, whatever, and you know that something's wrong, and you say in the back of my head, in the back of your head, well, is it cancer? And all of a sudden, you go to the doctor, and they say, Mike, you have cancer, and all of a sudden, it's there. I mean, it's like it's out in the open. You could have thought it, but now someone's telling you that. Do you think, and that's where I was going to go, do you think that now that it was said to him, that it's out there, that psychologically he does have to adjust to it? Just he's been dealing with this, whatever, but now all of a sudden this is what you have.
No, because when it comes to the cancer, okay, you're talking about something that you go from being healthy, not dealing with it, right? Even think about this, even where like with breast cancer, where you can have a gene that
Mm-hmm.
exposes you to having it more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may know you have that gene. So you know that there's the high potential that you end up getting breast cancer, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
That's still different because you're still healthy. And it's not until the fact that cancer kicks in do you start dealing with it. But when it comes to Tourette's and the way Tourette's are, for him to have been diagnosed, okay, he already previously was dealing with these tics. And he had been dealing, and the way Tourette's is diagnosed usually at a very young age, okay, or the tics started at a young age and it's diagnosed later on because maybe, for whatever reasons, and there's several different reasons that you could argue why someone doesn't go and get diagnosed with it, but they just end up getting diagnosed. A Tourette's diagnosis is not a cancer diagnosis. A cancer diagnosis is, oh shit, I'm losing weight. I'm all of a sudden going from healthy to unhealthy and I'm having severe health issues. Let me go get tested. Oh, I have cancer. Tourette's
Okay.
is, I've had these tics for the majority of my life as far as me remembering it, right? And they come and go, maybe worse sometimes than others. And maybe something was going on in his life at that point in time that kind of kicked it in and made it a little bit worse at that point in time. But it's still something he's been dealing with for all of his life, whether he was
Okay.
diagnosed or not.
All right.
Being
That's fair.
diagnosed was nothing more than a confirmation. It's like being gay your whole life and then getting confirmation that you're gay, but you knew you were gay. It's that's kind of like
Okay.
I mean, so for him to go, and what turned me off on it and what frustrated me was it wasn't I am going to postpone my concerts and completely, have to refund and cancel all the people who wanted to come see you. Uh and I'm doing it because, right now, like, I was just having trouble performing. So for the next couple of days, I'm just going to relax, or I'm going through something. No. His was like, I'm canceling for the foreseeable future to deal with the mental health problem from the Tourette's diagnosis. And that right there is a victim mentality if I've ever seen one. That is, I want people to feel bad for me. So when the next time I have a fucking concert, excuse my language,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have all these people come to my concert paying. And guess what the story's going to be? Look what he's overcome. God, what a story. They're going to have documentaries on him about it, right? They're going to have all of this. And I'm sorry, he's taking advantage of something that he has, an issue that he has, and he's exploiting it. And this is something that he's had already. And I think that a
Okay.
lot of people who have Tourette's may look at me like, oh, I can't believe you're saying this. But the reality is that I'm right. Like, it's nothing more than him taking advantage of something that he has and trying to turn it into something where people feel bad for you. And that's where, what I said before, I'm not one of those people. I don't want people to cater to me. I don't want people to feel bad for me. I'm not disabled. I can go out, I can work, I can perform. I was a Division I college athlete, right? There's pro athletes that have this. There's other singers that have this. Again, there's another woman, I don't know if you can look it up, very young woman who has Tourette's. And she came out on one of the Today shows or whatever and was talking about it. Or it was on Ellen DeGeneres. She came out and I think told people. I can't remember who her name is, but the people who are disabled and who really deal with the effects, they have been dealing with that for all of their life. It's not something that just pops up out of nowhere. It's just
Okay.
not.
All right. That's that's
So,
fair. One of the other things I wanted to ask you. relationship wise. So
Hmm.
as you were growing up and starting to like girls and everything, did that did Tourette's ever hinder you from, wanting to date this girl, or did they shy away from you, or so that was
I
one of
think
the
to put it on, I'm sure it did, right? I have a couple funny stories. Again, there's so many stories around this, especially in high school. But never with a girl that I actually liked. I think I tended to, for the most part, like girls who were very, intelligent, very kind of aware, and I think that any potential damage it may have done me in as far as the dating realm was kind of indirect and unseen, right? If a girl didn't like me because of my Tourette's, well, it wasn't someone I was probably trying to date or
okay,
cared about dating anyway, or so it kind of went under the table. I wouldn't have known, you
okay,
know.
okay,
Uh, any relationship I've been in, never been an issue at all. They've been very understanding. Never had any problem. Now, where I did have a couple issues, and this is a funny story, was some of the friends of the girls, where I remember I was again about a sophomore in high school, and I had a truck, and I was giving a couple girls a ride, and one of the girls kept making fun of my ticks and like mimicking them from the back seat, and I already didn't like this girl. Uh, and I was like, really? Like, getting frustrated, and she kept doing it though, and laughing and doing it. And I ended up kicking her out of the car, made her walk home a couple miles. Yeah, I warned her, but I made her get
no,
out of
I
the
mean,
car and walk
I
and
would
walk.
have
Yeah.
done the same thing.
So, but again, that was someone that I wasn't interested in, or so I don't think if it influenced my dating life, then hell, I'm better off for it now. Look at me, I'm married anyway. But it would have been something that was unseen. I never had any problems with relationships or anything like that. So for me, it had no impact.
Okay, all right. Well, Michael, that's all I have. Is there anything else you want to add or tell
Mm,
people, or?
I mean, I have stories for days. I was trying to think if there was oh, the awareness thing though.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up the awareness. I didn't want to say this. I saw an article. Maybe you saw the same thing. This is probably right after COVID, because TikTok got big during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's probably the next year, and this is after that girl I kept referring to, who has all the millions of followers, uh, became big. And what the article said was that teenage girls were now developing Tourette's because of TikTok. And basically, it was watching these people with Tourette's was giving them Tourette's because they were mimicking these. And that's the thing where it's, you know, obviously there's this common thought among the populace that Tourette's is, you see the people cussing, right? Or and
Mm-hmm.
saying all the
Mm-hmm.
vulgar things. And that does happen. I don't understand the cussing part, because I think cussing is kind of like learned. Like, you don't know words until you learn words.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the involuntary action of shouting and things like that, definitely. So maybe that plays into it. But I think that the awareness actually should be on people who are faking this, especially now on social media for clout. And I think that's what a lot of these girls were doing, because I saw girls actually going and mimicking the exact same tics that this other girl had. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, nah, like, there's no way. Like, uh, so I think that's where the awareness should be put. Not the people who actually have it, but the people who don't, who are trying to exploit it, or the people who, again, do have it and it's not extremely severe, and like the singer who is trying to, you know, get the victim, play the victim card, and exploit it like that. So, that's something I think that people should be aware of, and don't feel bad. Again, it's not a disability, at least for me. It's not, uh, you know, it sucks sometimes for a lot of people who are worse off. It does suck for sure, but I look at them no different than you would. Where, damn, I would hate to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope everyone has learned something because I have learned something. And Michael, let me just say, and I've said this to you before, but it is, and I truly mean it. I truly, truly mean it. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, even when we are disagreeing.
Hmm. Oh,
It is
absolutely.
always, I enjoy talking to you.
Mm.
So I want to thank you for again for giving up your time to come on my little show, which I hope is going to go national, y'all. So
Oh yeah. Oh, I saw. I think I saw one of your YouTube channels, and you definitely surpassed me in subscribers. So you need to start throwing them over to me.
so I'm still trying to get there. But everyone, Michael is check out Friendly Differences. He has been a many time guest, and he's going to come again on September the 16th.
Hmm.
But again, Michael, thank you so much for giving up your time and being on my
Yeah.
little show. So,
Your audience probably won't like me as much there in that
well,
other episode.
yeah, well, sometimes my audience doesn't like me. So,
That's all right.
all right,
All right.
everyone. So, until next time, peace.
Thank you.